So if we take the Singapore incident, it was up at around about 38,000 feet and it plunged 4,000 feet is what a lot of the media outlets said and people online were saying. So let's just take a quick look. Okay, if you're a nervous flyer and you are in an airport right now, or you're about to fly tomorrow, or you know someone who's about to fly and they're a little bit nervous, this is the video for them. It is aimed at people who are about to take an imminent flight, and the whole point of it is that at the moment, it isn't so easy to fix someone instantly. It takes time, it's a long road, and there's a lot of things to do. You have to be a big change of mindset. So I thought I would make this video for people who just need that little bit of extra push to get on that plane. And that is the main thing about this video. It is to get on that plane. So ideally, I'm imagining you're sat in the airport, you're a little bit worried, and you know, all sorts of things are going through your head. And we just want something to make you have the reassurance, to feel safe, to realize that what you're about to do is worth it. You know, aircraft are fantastic. I absolutely love them. It's obviously my job. And I've spent the last sort of 20 years speaking to nervous flyers and getting them on that plane. This one, though, is for short notice, 24, 48 hours to go. You know, you haven't got a huge amount of time, but you want to get on there because you know, there's a huge reason for it. You may be wanting to see family or friends, a big family occasion. You might have this amazing holiday. You might need a big break from work. An amazing life experience, you know, going traveling or hiking somewhere or seeing an amazing site that you've always wanted to see. And then, of course, there's a professional side of things where people need to do it for their job. So maybe you're going to a business meeting or you've got a big deal to get through. And that is your why. And I want you to remember that throughout the whole of this video, your why. Because as I say, you need that little glimmering light at the end of the tunnel that getting on this aeroplane, getting through your fear is really, really worth it. I'm speaking from a place of a little bit of sympathy myself. I had a little bit of fear a while ago. Genuinely, it was a fear, and it still is a little bit. I still have to work at it, and it's sharks, believe it or not. So I spent a lot of time in the Caribbean flying long haul, and everyone would be jumping off the side of a catamaran. There would be swimming in the sea, and I would really only get in the sea if there was lots of people around me. And I ended up missing out on a lot of experiences because of that. So what did I do? I changed my search habits. I changed what I read, what I looked at. I went from shark attacks and looking up statistics of how many people have been bitten to, you know, the good side of sharks. You know, I know it sounds funny saying that, but there genuinely is. You know, there are a lot of, if you look at Ocean Ramsey, she's amazing. She goes swimming with them and it's perfectly safe. So genuinely over the time, I slowly began to realize that the chances of any shark attack is so slim that it isn't worth missing out on those amazing life opportunities, which I was. And I can proudly say that I've totally changed my search habits. The algorithms are feeding me, you know, sort of marine life and good stories about sharks and swimming with sharks, not the scary things that I used to get sent before. And that is the top tip to you. Please change your search habits. Please change what you watch when it comes to aircraft and flying, and start to look at the safety, the multiple layers of safety that are there for you with the design, the pilot training, and everything that goes on behind the scenes. So you will feel a lot better if you do that. So yeah, just please remember your why. An airplane's amazing. There's fantastic saying. I don't know who I can attribute it to, but a mile of road will take you a mile and a mile of runway will take you anywhere in the world. And that really is the truth. So I want you to get on that plane and I want you to feel good about it. And I'm going to give you 10 really good reasons, a little bit of info in some, a little bit of reassurance in others, and just a little bit of sort of home truth as well. So you know that when your mind is doom scrolling, you can actually bring it back to the reality of these 10 sort of little chapters that I'm going to quickly cover. The final one is one of the big ones. It's weather and thunderstorms, so hang around for that one. But we're slowly going to go through the 10. And as I said to you, the big thing is to remember your why. So let's start with that. Okay, number one then on the list, get the elephant out of the room, accidents and incidents. In anything you do, whether you're out on holiday jumping on a moped, whether you're kite surfing, whether you're walking, to the shopping centre, or driving your car, out running, there's a million different things where, hazards that could get you, obviously. So there isn't anything that you can do in life really that is zero risk. When it comes to aircraft, we've worked extremely hard for the last 100 years or so to look at any incidents and accidents, and we have really dug deep into each one to find out what happened, whether it was a human error, was a human factor with, them being overworked, whether switches were in the wrong place, too close to each other, whether there was failures in mechanical parts of the aeroplane, training, and every single time there's been an accident, as sad and as awful as they are, there are a huge amount of learning points, and they do save the next 10, 20, 100 mistakes that are to come, because we are humans and make errors. So, it is constant improvement, and every accident does make the skies safer. And for the last, if you look at every decade, the amount of accidents that have happened, they have hugely reduced every decade until the last few decades now. They are pretty much, flatlining along the bottom. Of course, you're going to get the odd one, but that's the same with any accident. So, yeah, as far as accidents and incidents go, I think the numbers are really good to look at as well. I hate statistics. They don't make too much sense to me. However, there's around about 80 to 100,000 commercial flights a day. So the one that you're about to get on is only one of approximately 100,000 flights today. And how often do you hear of accidents? Of course, they can happen every now and again, but think another 99,999 planes as well as yours are going to take off today, and they're going to be pretty mundane, uneventful, and they're going to land perfectly fine, and you're going to get off the other end to your amazing life experience, which is your reason why you are sat in the airport at this time. Okay, let's look at number 2. Do I get worried? When my wife drives to work, that is genuinely my biggest worry. Once she's at work, I know she's safe, and I know that she's in good hands, and I don't even worry. I don't check her flight lands. I don't do anything like that. Now, if it was a dangerous industry and if there was worry, I, of course, would check, and I would be making sure that, she landed, and I'd be keeping an eye on the flight, and I don't do that. Even if she takes my little 5-year-old away, she sometimes gets the chance to take her mum and my 5-year-old away. Again, it doesn't worry me for one moment that they're flying. I know they are safe on our aircraft, and I know that they're going to get to the end absolutely fine, and you should take reassurance with that. I've seen pretty much everything. I've seen the worst that can happen. I've seen failures, and I've seen mistakes being made, and I've seen the system pick up those mistakes, and we carry on completely safely, and nothing happens within the flight. Other than those mistakes are reported, and then people learn from them and we don't do them again. But as far as the passengers down the back, it's nothing to worry about at all, and they get there completely safely. So having seen all that experience behind me and knowing what it's like, it does, it says a lot that I don't actually worry about flying. The one thing I would say is look at the pilots, or think about the pilots and the crew. They walk on that aeroplane, short haul, medium haul, long haul, ultra long haul. They walk on that aeroplane with a smile on their face. They love their jobs. And as I say, short haul pilots, they're flying 3-4 times a week, the crews and the pilots. Long haul pilots, it's more like 5, 6, 7 times a month. And they see a lot of what goes on. They would not be getting on those aeroplanes with a big smile if it was dangerous. So keep that in your head. I sometimes relate it to a flooded road. So imagine you're in your car and you're sat there thinking, can the car get through this flooded road? I might damage the car. So what do? You sit and you wait, and you see a couple of cars go through, maybe a 4 before, then you see a car similar to yours drive through, and then you learn it is safe. I can get through that road, so I don't have to turn around, and I'll drive through the water slowly, take my time, and it's the reassurance of those other people doing it and not being harmed, their car not being damaged, that tells you that you can drive through that road. So I want you to try and remember that when you get on the plane, that the crews get on. They like those cars driving through that water, showing you that it isn't dangerous. They get on there, they smile. So try and remember that. We get on happy. You should try and get on at least feeling safe and secure. Take that as more reassurance. Okay, step number 3, engine failures. Now, I have to say first that I have not had one single engine failure in 25 years of flying across about 7 or 8 different aircraft types. We've shut down aircraft engines on purpose in flight as part of training to relight them, to give us the confidence that they will relight. But yeah, in all of those years, and I don't think I know any of my pilot friends who've had an engine failure either. So this just shows how super, super efficient and reliable and robust these engines are. However, if you were in your car again, I'll relate to something that's every day. If you stalled your car at the traffic lights, what would you do? You'd dip the clutch, you put your foot on the brake, handbrake on, you'd start the engine again, and 999 times out of 1,000, what would happen? That engine would start. And you know your engine in your car is likely to start every single time you ask that of it. These aircraft engines are built with unbelievable amount of backup systems, and they're built to such a high standard and quality where they have to prove each part over and over again that it will work, that that engine is going to start. So if we happen to lose an engine in the cruise, if it flames out or there's some sort of failure, we know that in all likelihood, if we go through our checks and we relight that engine, it will relight. So you're going to get it back. So there's one part of this engine failure worry. Even if it did, and it's so remote, as I say, it's never happened in my 25-year career, and I don't think I know anyone who's had one personally, it will relight. And we do it in the simulator all the time, and it does relight. The second part of it is engines, although they keep you flying and they get you up in the air in the first place, they aren't solely responsible for you actually flying. A lot of people think if what they'll say, Simon, what would happen if both engines fail at the same time? And I always say, what do you think would happen? And they say, we'll just plummet out of the sky. It's your forward speed that gives you the lift over the wings that keeps you flying. You only have to look at a glider. You like a parachute, which is a wing when you see them sailing through the air. That again is lift. As long as they've got forward speed, they create lift, and the gliders continue going. Even a paper aeroplane does exactly the same. Now, an airliner may weigh 300 tons, up to 400 tons or what have you with the A380, but they do the same. As long as they've got forward speed, so we'll aim for around about 250 knots if we do a double engine failure in the flight simulator, and we will fly fine. Slowly descend, we'll trade our height for speed to keep that energy going, but we'll glide for probably half an hour. And in that half an hour, our number one priority is to get one of the engines started. And yeah, that is the system, and that's what it's built for. It doesn't happen, but when it does happen, we've got backups, and that's what flying is all about. So if you lose both engines, you aren't going to drop out the sky, so don't worry about that. And if you lose one engine, so you have one engine remaining, that aircraft can do everything on one engine that it can do on two engines. It can, apart from taking off, but we wouldn't take off with one engine. So it can fly around all day for hours on end. That's why we're allowed into the middle of the ocean without, with the chance of one engine failing in that ridiculously remote possibility, but we can fly around all day on one engine. We can descend, do an approach. If the approach isn't safe, we can put power on one engine and that aircraft will fly away again, and we can position ourselves for an approach, and we can do that multiple times if we need to. There's pretty much nothing once you're in the air. If you lose an engine, or if you're just getting airborne, you lose an engine. Again, we have to be able to take off at that fastest, most critical time, just as we're rotating off the runway. Bang, an engine goes. We can still take off, safely climb, clear all the terrain, take our time, come back to land if we lose an engine. So do not worry about engines. Do not worry about engine sounds when you're in the cruise. They go up and down. There's a huge amount of power goes on the engines to try and keep speed with the air or the wind changes. And it changes hugely up at altitude. And then it will take a huge amount of power off back to idle like your car does at the traffic lights. And then back up to mid-power, full power, and that's what's happening. When you're down the back of the aeroplane, all that sound's coming at you, and you can hear the engines. So some flights you'll think, God, the engines didn't sound like this on my last flight. It probably is your seating position. If you're at the front of the aeroplane, you're doing 500 miles an hour, that sound is traveling behind you in a way you don't hear it. It's very quiet at the front of the plane. That's why we normally put the expensive seats there. And if you're down the back of the plane, it can be a bit more noisy. So you do hear those fluctuations in the engines, but it's nothing to worry about. Okay, on to number 4, the drop after takeoff. When we're talking about the drop after takeoff, it's reasonably simple to explain to you. It's partially what we're doing with the aeroplane, and it's partially what is happening inside your inner ear, where all the balance parts of your body and balance systems are kept. So after takeoff, we use a lot of power to get airborne. And once we're safely airborne, we don't need all that power. We don't want to burn a lot of fuel for no reason. We don't want to put down a load of noise over those people who live near the airports, because you can imagine every 30 seconds to a minute, an aircraft taking off at full power and flies over your house. It's going to make a lot of noise. So we really are conscious of that. So we bring the power back when we don't need that full power to a preset safe amount to clear terrain, completely fly away, and the aircraft to fly normal. But we reduce the power, the sound, the fuel burn, and it reduces wear and tear on the engines. So it's winner chicken dinner all around. However, down the back of the airplane, it's at around about 1,000 feet. It can change depending on terrain around the airport, but normally at around about 1,000 feet. We'll intentionally bring the power back a little bit. You'll hear it down the back of the airplane where some pilots do it really quickly. And as a fear flying coach, I always think, I wish I could train every pilot in the world to do it like sort of slowly. And then that noise isn't there. And you don't feel it, hear it so badly. Also, at the same time, we lower the nose to accelerate because we've still got flaps and slats out. We've taken the gear up, that's gone in the belly of the airplane, but the flaps and slats are still out. We need to speed up. to get the wing to still keep all that lift when we bring the flaps and slats in, because they are extra lift devices. So we need to speed up. So at 1,000 feet, we lower the nose. It's still climbing the whole time. And we continue climbing. Even if we lose an engine in the flight simulator, we fail that check if we descend when we lose the engine. So even with one engine, we have to still keep climbing. You accelerate, and then you continue climbing in the climb once you're clean, it's called. So down the back of the airplane, you hear the sound drop, the nose drops forward. You don't have much of a view at all. Your peripheral vision is, in the cabin, you just feel the cabin drop, but you don't really see horizon. So your inner ear is tricked. You hear the noise, you feel the drop, and all of a sudden your brain is tricked into thinking the aircraft's dropped, which it hasn't. It happens to us in the simulator. That's exactly how the simulator works. It stays stationary on these hydraulic legs and the box moves around. And pilots believe that we are braking, taking off, rolling right, left, accelerating, flying over hills, climbing away from airports. That box doesn't move. We're tricked into thinking it does by the subtle movements on those hydraulic legs. It's exactly what's happening to you in the takeoff scenario that we've just talked about. Hopefully, you're ready for it now. It isn't going to feel as bad for the rest of your life for every single flight. On to step 5. Okay, point number 5, to give you some reassurance, it's the emergency card and the PA briefs. So the emergency briefs when you get on board the aeroplane. I think this is one area of the industry that we could improve, but I know why we do it the way we do, because we're talking to a whole cabin of people who aren't really scared, and there's 10 to 20% maybe of the cabin who are a little bit scared, and there may be a few people on board who are really, really scared. So yeah, we get through the regulations. We want to get the aircraft away on time. I am now going to be the person who hopefully slows that all down for you, explains why, so you aren't triggered by these emergency cards and these briefs talking about, evacuating down slides with smoke and if we land in the water. So a little bit of magic. We'll get the iPad up. And yeah, let's have a look. So yeah, no wonder people are scared. You get on board the aircraft, and one of the first things that you see are these safety cards talking about the brace position, oxygen masks falling from the ceiling, slides coming out of the side of the aeroplane, and what to do with your life jackets and all the rest of it. This is, of course, regulations. We're mandated to give you a full safety brief, but I do get why it is quite triggering, and it does worry a lot of people. So let's quickly break it down. As I say, it's mandated. We have to do it. In the extreme situation, an extremely rare situation, which, if it happens, people do need to have a good background knowledge of what to do. So we aren't all in shock and we know the actions. Talking about, the nearest exit may be behind you. That's because of previous incidents in the past where people haven't known where their emergency exit is, and it slows down the exit. So one, it's mandated, just like it is when you go into a workspace like a big office block or something. They will tell you, here's the exit, here in the event of a fire, this is the exit, this is the muster point. You aren't expecting that building to burst into flames. You aren't walking around the building terrified that a fire is going to happen. It's just something that has to be said for the worst case scenario, and it's the same on board. Take it seriously, listen to it, obviously, but please don't let it scare you and worry you. The chances of this happening, as I say, is 100,000 flights a day. There's very, very few incidents all year. There's something like 5 billion airline tickets are issued each year. And it is just for safety, and it's because we have to do it. So oxygen masks as well. A lot of people, while we're on the subject, we've been pre-programmed by movies and TV that when, the aircraft starts to rumble, oxygen masks fall down and then what happens? It's the disaster movie where they end up on a desert island having to look after themselves, or, all sort of disaster films happen. So our brains think, oh my God, if an oxygen mask drops, that's potentially what's going to happen next. When actually, it's just the aircraft's lost pressurization. The oxygen mask drops. It's like in hospital. If you had a breathing issue or you had pneumonia and you weren't getting enough oxygen to your body, the doctors would give you the mask. It wouldn't make you panic. You'd just sit and breathe and go, great. If you're scuba diving, you aren't going to panic because you have to put an oxygen mask on your face in water. It's the same thing. You're in a cabin. We give you the oxygen. We descend the aircraft reasonably quickly, but completely safely, down to a level where you can breathe, and then the oxygen masks can come off. And then we continue flying the airplane around and land at the nearest airport. It's just oxygen masks are there when the cabin pressurization fails, but there's multiple backup systems to make sure that doesn't happen. So don't let it worry you. But yeah, oxygen masks, emergency card, and the PA briefs covered. Step number 6, hopefully a quick one. Crew and pilots, secret signals. So firstly, the ones to avoid looking at. A lot of people ask me, why do the cabin crew look so scared and rushed around just before takeoff? It isn't because anything's wrong. You hear a few bings and bongs in the cabin at this point because we're getting ready to take off. So one of the secret signs is the pilots will flick the seatbelt signs on and off. It makes a double ding in the cabin and it tells the crew, because they can't see out the windows all the time or they might not have a view of the runway, we are about to get airborne and take off. So please sit down and strap in if you're finishing off your last couple, you've got a few seconds left to finish your checks off and sit down. And that is when most nervous passengers are thinking, we're moving. I'm starting to get worried. My adrenaline, my nervous system is kicking in. It's trying to protect me from a threat that I've misidentified as it being in an aircraft. We're also about to take off. I'll look to the crew for reassurance just at the time when the crew are rushing around. They're working hard. They're trying to get their checks done in time to sit down in time for takeoff. So don't take the looks on their faces. They're just professionals getting their job done, ready for takeoff. That's one of the signals. We also have other ones where we can talk to different phones around the aeroplane and dings and dongs. Passengers are putting seatbelt signs, the call bells on. There's a lot of different dings. There's none that you need to worry about that are secret signals to tell, that some incident is imminent. So don't worry about that. One of the funny ones I've just flown to Rome, and we asked the crew for chicken nuggets, I think it was, because we just needed a snack on the flight home. And she then started doing the chicken sign down the aisle to tell her colleague that chicken nuggets were needed, which I thought was quite funny. That is one cabin crew signal that I haven't seen before. Okay, one of the biggies next, number 7, turbulence. And in with this, media sensationalism. Now, a lot of people think that we drop in turbulence. I'm going to try and use a quick example of the Singapore Airlines, which is one of the most recent severe turbulence incidents, and it's probably one of the worst. So why don't we use the worst case just to show you how, the incident was bad. Obviously, some people got injured. They were out of their seats. I don't want to talk about the incident with that regard because I don't think it's respectful to the crews and the people involved. However, I'd like to talk about the media sensationalism, which is what triggers nervous flyers to feel really scared about turbulence. So again, let's get the iPad up. Okay, we have different reports like, the aircraft plunged 4,000 feet. I get it. The media outlets are in a clickbait or click competition for people to click onto their website. That's how they get their money, and they're just trying to run their businesses. But it doesn't help you if you're a nervous flyer. So if we take the Singapore incident, it was up at around about 38,000 feet. And it plunged 4,000 feet is what a lot of the media outlets said and people online were saying. So let's just take a quick look. Okay, here, at this point, is where the actual severe turbulence incident happened. It took the crew a little bit by surprise. Normally, the forecasts are superb. Other aircraft are around to tell you. And even if we do get a turbulence event, a lot of the time you'll see the crew still walking around. And that is because 99.9% of turbulence incidents, you could actually walk around the cabin. We don't allow it because, we want the crews to be safe. Your welfare comes first. Flight safety comes first. However, there is only a very, very, very a small amount of occasions when turbulence happens where people could potentially get hurt, where the aircraft rises and dips a little bit and people can hit themselves off the seats or any other parts of the cabin. So this is where their severe turbulence incident happened. And it says altitude jumps by 270 feet. I think it's been reduced down to about 148 feet now when they've looked at the actual data of the flight. It's still a reasonable amount, but aircraft are 1,000 feet apart. So if anyone has any worries about turbulence dropping and aircraft coming too close to each other, we're 1,000 feet apart. So even in the worst case of this turbulence incident, if there was an aircraft directly underneath it for the entire time, the closest they would have come is 850 feet when the normal is 1,000 feet. So no worries there either. This plunge, as you'll see, it was about 15 minutes after the incident when the crew had got obviously through this awful situation where people were hurt. One gentleman passed away, very unfortunately, of a heart attack, probably brought on by the incident. This is when the aircraft do this, what the media say, plunged 4,000 feet. What actually happened is it's a controlled descent on the way to their diversion airport to get the injured customers some medical attention. And they then continued a normal diversion and descent down to Bangkok Airport, I believe. So it just shows that the media sensationalism, the actual fact there is 150 feet change, which is not a lot at all, really, in an aircraft. It's not the 4,000 foot plunge. So when you read newspapers, please listen to what I'm saying and do not take every word that they say as gospel and truth. The facts here, remember this diagram. Yes, it descended 4,000 feet or so, but that was a totally controlled normal diversion by the pilots, a descent as part of the diversion. So I hope that makes you feel a little bit better. How can I explain turbulence quickly? I'll do it in the most simple way possible that I can really think of, really. The wing creates an amount of lift all the time that we're flying through the air. That's what it's designed to do. So say you take a Hue light bulb, one of the ones that you can change and dim up and down, or a dimmer in your kitchen. If you set it to, say, 50%, if you turn it up to 52, 53%, the bulb gets a bit lighter. If you turn it down to 48, 47, 46, it gets a little bit dim, and then it goes back to 50. It's back to its normal light. At no time does that light go out. It's the same with our wing of the aeroplane when we're in turbulence. So turbulence is caused by air, down at ground level. Air will whip round buildings. It'll change directions. All of a sudden, there'll be a gust. Up at altitude, instead of it doing 10, 20 miles an hour, it does 120, 150, 170 miles an hour, and it'll change direction as well. We're flying through that at 500 miles an hour, so the lift over the wing, it's getting a different angle of air and a different speed of air changing all the time in turbulent air. So it's like that Hue light bulb. The wing's set at 50% lift. Suddenly, we change the angle of the wind and speed against it. It'll go to 52% lift, or it'll go to 48% lift. And when we're flying through the air so fast, these numbers happen super quick, and they'll oscillate. They'll change direction. They'll come back. So it'll go 48 to 52 to 50 to 49 to 51, and that is what gives you the rumble and the shake in the cabin. The wing never stops flying. It doesn't drop at any point. I hope that makes you realise the biggest thing you need to do is have your seatbelt on, even when we're not expecting turbulence, even when the seatbelt signs aren't on. You put your seatbelt on and you have it loosely fastened. When the seatbelt sign comes on, fasten it nice and tight and snug, and then you loosen it off when the seatbelt sign comes on, but keep it fastened. If you're in the toilet or if you're out walking around stretching your legs, everyone needs to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's actually healthy and it reduces the chance of DVT, the deep vein thrombosis. So, it's just a mix of the chances of hitting turbulence and the chances of, the health problems. You want to stretch your legs. But if it starts to get a little bit rumbly and you're a little bit worried, walk back to your seat, nice and calm, hold on to the seats like we do, sit in your seat and fasten that seatbelt and you'll be absolutely fine. Even in these severe turbulence events, pretty much all of the passengers who have the seatbelts on sat in their seat, they don't end up getting hurt unless they get hit by something that flies like an iPad or something, but it keeps you nice and safe. I still don't know why we don't say have the seatbelts all the time, every single flight. In a seatbelt, in a car, if I'm in a taxi, it's dinging away at me, telling me to put the seatbelt on. I think in all coaches and buses and on trains and stuff, we should have seatbelts as well. But yeah, do what we do is the top advice. The pilots in the flight deck, from the second we move the aeroplane, we have our seatbelt on the 5-point harness the whole time. If one person gets out to go to the toilet, the other guy constantly has his seatbelt on the whole time. We do not take our seatbelt off at any time other than for a break to go to the toilet. So do what we do. Just have your seatbelt loosely fastened, and that'll protect you from turbulence. And remember the tips I gave you about the media sensationalism and what really happens in turbulence. Next, number 8. Okay, number 8, medicals on board, or worrying that you may have an event where you're ill or not well and need medical help, and I'm stuck in the sky in the middle of nowhere. My God, what would happen? Okay, first of all, if you have any medical issues, always get clearance from the airline before you fly. People fly with all sorts of medical issues, trust me, and all sorts of medical equipment. Don't worry about asking the question, will stop you flying. If you are stopped from flying because of a medical issue, trust me, you want to be, because you don't want to be diverting aeroplanes when all of a sudden you take a downturn because of your condition and we're moving an aeroplane down towards a hospital to get you medical treatment. So always ask the airline first as the top tip. For those that are worried about just randomly getting sick in the air, our crew are superbly trained, and they're also backed up by amazing equipment and support on the ground. So A story. We do training every 6 months to a year. We go into our headquarters and we do all the normal piloty stuff. But for the past few years, what we've started doing is actually watching each other. So the pilots get a chance to look at the cabin crew work with the pilots, and we see what each other does as part of our job to better understand that, because we're behind that door in the flight deck, we don't always see what happens when there's a medical. So we see it in the rigs. That's like a big aircraft on the ground. And I sat and watched a simulated heart attack from a passenger. And my God, the crew are all over it. They work like a team. They're trained. They do this all of the time. And I thought, if anyone ever has a heart attack in the air, you are in very good hands. They've got superb medical equipment on board, almost like a paramedic's medical kit. And then we have a live feed to the ground through our satellite phone to aeromedical doctors 24/7, and we can ring them and they will patch through and they will talk the cabin crew member through what to do, which pouch, which equipment to use. We can also ask for volunteers on board, like doctors, to help. So the main thing I'm trying to say is, if you're sick in the air, we pretty much can cover any situation. So do not worry about that. If you have an illness, please get cleared before you fly, and it keeps everybody safe. But yeah, medicals, try not to worry about that. You're in good hands. Don't let it spoil your flight worrying about that. On to step number 9. So when things don't go to plan, turbulence we've talked about, you're safe in your seat. There are lots of other things. I can't cover them all, but people worry about on the takeoff, what happens if we suddenly can't take off anymore? I'm going to run off the end of the runway, and they're worried about that. What actually happens is, before every single takeoff, we take a million different factors. We take the weather, the wind, the temperature, the pressure of the air, the gradient of the runway, how long the runway is, how heavy the aeroplane is. Trust me, everything goes into a big calculation. We double check it with each other. We check it against the computer, and we know exactly that runway on this aeroplane on this day can get to this speed, and then we can cancel the takeoff, and we will stop with a huge safety buffer before the end of the runway. So if we need to stop, we will stop before the end of the runway. Beyond that speed, we know we're going to take off and in the air, and as I discussed earlier, even if we lose an engine, again, that isn't just left to chance, hope we get airborne. We know that on one engine we'll get airborne. So every takeoff is planned, and we know what we're going to do. Every landing, the same. We know we're going to stop, whether it's snowy, wet, icy, crosswinds, tailwind, what have you. Everything is to the nearest foot. So we can, in the brief, we talk about a million different things, but in the brief, we can say that on this landing, we will stop in this distance. The next turnoff is Alpha 888. So we know the actual turnoff we're going to take. And in my aeroplane, we've got a thing called BTV. You program where you want to stop, and the aircraft actually brakes to stop you at that turnoff. And it'll adjust the speed that you slow down at and everything. So yeah, don't worry. But my point is, we brief and we talk and we calculate everything. Nothing's left to chance. So in that takeoff, you're safe. In the landing, you're safe. People get worried about the go-rounds. So when we're coming into land and all of a sudden you're expecting to land, all that power comes on. It's a hugely disorientating and unusual feeling, especially for a passenger who's nervous. One, the air, you think you're going to land, and all of a sudden, huge amounts of noise, huge amounts of power and acceleration. The aircraft tilts backwards, and you are just so disorientated and not expecting it. Hopefully now, when I talk you through it, you will be. It's not a big deal for us at all. We have to do it in the simulator multiple times. We brief every single landing. We brief the go-around and what we'll do. It's a bit busy for us, but we like it. That's part of our flying. If we have to do it, it is like when you're parallel parking your car, when there's a spot, it's just slightly bigger than your car. You have to get that reverse and that angle right. If you're reversing in and all of a sudden you realize you've screwed up that angle, you're either going to hit the curb and trash your alloy, or you're going to scratch down the side of your car. What do? You don't just continue and scrape it in. You stop, you go, right, this isn't going to work. I'm going to pull back out again. I'm going to line up and I'm going to do it. And sometimes it'll take 2 or 3 times, but you'll get it in. Your alloys won't be damaged. You won't scratch the car. It's exactly what we're doing. We are like, right, for whatever reason, this approach, the aircraft hasn't got off the runway ahead of us. We're not going to land when there's an aircraft on the runway. Air traffic control might not have cleared us to land. We might not be that stable. Our speed might be slightly fast because the wind's changed completely. We just go, okay, speed, or one of the many other reasons that we've got, go around, and we'll tell the other pilot. They'll put power on. We'll bring the nose up, and it's just like another takeoff, but you're already airborne. So that bit in the middle where it turns and lots of power and acceleration, it's awful and it's unsettling for you. But now that you're ready for it, you know what's happening. It turns from a landing into an immediate takeoff, And that is it. It's not a big deal. It's nothing to worry about. We're quite busy. We're talking to air traffic. A lot of people say, why don't we talk to the passengers and tell them what's happening? We do as soon as we can, but it's quite busy at first, but it's nothing to worry about. So yeah. On to the final big one. Almost finished the list. You should be ready to get on your flight soon. The last one we're going to cover is weather and big, thunderstorm clouds and lightning. So let's get into that. Okay, weather. I'm going to, again, use the iPad because I think a picture paints 1,000 words. And this is a great example. I do have one of my clients who I deal with on a one-to-one basis. I sent him these a little while ago, and he said that it was fantastic because he tracks the weather and he tracks the turbulence. And I've tried to say, don't do it because it's not great to do those things because it isn't really the route that will fly. Air traffic will take us out of turbulent weather or thunderstorm weather, or we'll change the direction of flight ourselves, and it'll be a completely different route to the day before, which was what some of these apps use for turbulence. The only thing you're going to do is worry. The only thing you're going to do is tell your brain it's a threat, and you need to understand that turbulence isn't an issue. I've got a turbulence trio, which is a book, an audio book, and a workbook. Take a look at that. And then this example now will hopefully make you realise that it isn't a huge amount to worry about either. So, okay, on to number 10, one of the big ones, weather, thunder, lightning, and a tiny touch on turbulence as well. A lot of people use these apps where they follow the weather, they check it for a week out, they look at the turbulence, and I always say, please don't do that. Even as a pilot, I'll look at the weather a few days out, I won't look at the turbulence until the day, until sometimes I get up to the flight, because it changes so much. And what happens with the turbulence apps and some of the weather things, they don't show the whole picture of where your aeroplane's going to fly. They look at yesterday's flight or the normal flight, and they predict the turbulence on that route. What actually happens with our flight planners, the people who choose our routes, they'll look at the turbulence and they will avoid, and they'll pick a different route to avoid it. What happens when we get to the aeroplane is the pilots have looked at it and we'll choose a different route to avoid it. If we're still heading towards some turbulence or some weather because it's moving in, air traffic control have got a huge radar up to 200 miles from the field, and they will tell us to fly a different route, different heading, and they'll keep us clear. So the chances are that you'll look at this app for a week out from your holiday or your flight, you'll worry yourself all week, and you won't even be in a turbulent area. As far as weather goes, picture paints 1,000 words. I have a client who I deal with on a one-to-one basis. He's a little bit worried about the weather. He checks it all the time, and I sent this to him a couple of weeks ago, and he said it did him the world of good to see it from this perspective. So let's give you that unique perspective. We'll get the iPad out again. So when you're looking at the turbulence apps, there'll be a God's eye view. So we're looking down on the flight, and they'll predict our flight path. And it may look to you, oh my God, we're flying near the big area of red and we're flying through it. Now, that picture looks down through 80,000 feet, 60,000 feet, 40,000 feet, 20,000 feet, 10,000 feet. And the line that we're flying through, our flight planners know, because they look side on at the weather, and they know that if we're up at 38,000 feet and that weather stops at 16,000 feet and it goes down to ground level, we're completely flying. So in reality, what it can look like is we can have clouds like this with a bit of lightning out the bottom, and it can be terrible. However, what we're actually doing is we're up here and we're flying through and we're totally clear of it. Or in flight, we'll actually, with air traffic control, they'll say go direct to this point to avoid weather, and we'll be 20, 30 miles clear here, and we'll fly through and get back to the point that we were going to go. So you've worried yourself about this turbulence, and we're never actually going to fly through it. So the top tip, looking at those apps, looking at the weather, just trust the process. Think about this situation next time. And even better than that, I can give you a prime example of it. So here is a flight that I flew to Florida. The blue line here is the route. It looks like it's flying through all these red areas, which is lots of thunderstorms cells in the area. The lightning strikes that have happened in the last sort of half an hour to an hour. And we're flying into Orlando Airport in here. So it looks terrible. When you actually zoom in, because that's huge, it's thousands of miles across, what it actually looks like is the cells break up and we can actually be filtered through them and be in completely clear air. Once we get into the airfield, we then have radar on board the aeroplane. So if I use a big green thing so you can see what I'm pointing at, this is the aircraft here. and we're flying up, making a left-hand turn, and then into the airport, which is here, Orlando Airport. And what happens is this red and yellow and green out to the left-hand side is where the thunderstorm is. And what we're actually going to do is air traffic control will bring us in through lots of clear air, turn us left inside of the storm. We'll fly into Orlando Airport, and we're nowhere near that bad weather. How it looks out the window, just to prove that, remember that picture? Looking out of the window, this is what we actually had that day. So you can see clear blue skies all the way up here. However, there's dark cells here, dark cells here. So this is that area that you saw on the previous slide over here, off to the left. And this is what it looks like out of the aircraft. As you can see, hugely clear open air, clear blue skies. Now, if you'd looked at the original picture, you would have terrified yourself, thinking, oh my God, we're flying into Orlando in the middle of a thunderstorm. So please don't look at the weather. Don't look at the turbulence apps. Trust the process. Remember this, and it'll make you feel a lot safer on board the aeroplane. On to the final part. Stick with me. Okay, those are my top 10 tips. Hope it's covered the main topics that worry you and scare you. And now you feel a lot more safe and secure to get on that plane, which is, remember, is the whole point of this video. The reality is that your flight is going to be just like the 79,999 flights that day. It's going to be pretty mundane. It's going to go to plan, and not a lot will happen. Remember the big one? The crews are smiling and the pilots are smiling, and I get on board, and I'm happily to let my wife and kids get on board because I know that it's going to be safe and there's no way that they're in danger. The world awaits. There's a huge experience out there waiting for you, your holiday. There's friends and relatives waiting, or that, you know, that amazing job opportunity. And when you get off at the other end, please remember that when we've got a bit more time, we can talk about how to cure this for good. Plenty more videos to come, and I'd say that if your fear is turbulence, I've got an amazing video that I think you should watch next, so it'll be popping up somewhere. And with that, I'd love to leave you with my catchphrase: fly happy, fly safe. Hope this works for you. Have a safe flight.